Great, so thank you for the invitation, Hari, and the PropertyGuru team. Thank you everyone for being here this morning. I'm pleased to be here, and I want to talk a little bit about where technology meets real estate. And I mean that very specifically, because we talk about technology and we talk about industries or sectors like real estate, and we have this sense that technology will just wash over everything and all activities. And what I'd like to talk about instead is the specific areas and manners in which I believe at least technology will be impactful in this sector in the coming years. I would agree with my colleague and prior speaker that technology is an instrument. It is not the focus. So as an instrument, how will it be used in this sector? That's what I'd like to talk about today. So just to start off, I'd like to do some explanation. How does somebody who's built a 20-year career in digital technology, consumer digital technology, end up involved in the real estate sector, moreover the commercial real estate sector, and on the board of JLL? It may not seem obvious, but actually there were certain signs along the way in my journey which make it to some degree not so crazy. When I started at Google, my first job was as the global head of local search, which meant, as was mentioned, responsibility for Google Earth, Google Maps, and all local searches happening on Google.com. At that time, as you can imagine, there were many industries, local in nature, which were being impacted by the flow of traffic and requests by individuals through Google. Not through the phone, not through a walk-in visit, but coming through the strange mechanism on the internet on someone's computer. And one of those industries that was starting to feel that pressure early on was the residential real estate sector. To the point where we eventually had 10 CEOs of the major residential brokerage houses in the US force a visit on the Google campus to have a one-day offsite to talk about what Google is doing to the real estate industry, because it turned out that a very large percentage of the leads that these brokerage houses were receiving all of a sudden were coming through Google. So seemingly minor things and choices, like where does a brokerage house's name appear in the search results? Where are the location of the ads? When you click on a link on Google search, where does it take you to the underlying website? All of these things started to matter because they significantly impacted the volume of leads and prospects, and ultimately the quality of business for many of these brokerage houses. So that was my first sort of moment where I realized how a technology like search could impact an industry like real estate. Later on, what became even more apparent when we did this project in India called MapMaker was, again, the power of the concept of location and technology. Bringing this idea of geolocation into the digital world was in and of itself special, but when we were in India thinking about countries that had no maps, that had no sense or access to space, we created this product called MapMaker out of Bangalore, and it was a user-generated map technology. So anybody in the world could place a position on the map and contribute to creating a map as a grassroots activity. Within 1 month, through a grassroots effort, the country of Vietnam was mapped entirely. A more comprehensive, more accurate map of the country that had ever existed in history prior. So that's when I realized, and there was a lot of excitement about it, it captured the attention and the excitement of people in the country, and that's where I realized again how important and core to our very existence as people is this idea of place, is this idea of location, and one's relative location to others in our community and elsewhere. So moving forward, I also want to make sure that what we talk about is not really technology, but innovation. Technology is just an example of innovation, and we can get lost in our excitement about technology because we happen to live in an era where that is what we feel every day. But innovation is everywhere, and it's more important to have an innovation mindset than a technology mindset. Innovation is about thinking about new ways to create value for your stakeholders, whether it's employees, whether it's owners, occupiers, service providers in the real estate sector. Case in point, this past year, Bill Gates and Melinda Gates issued their annual letter for the Gates Foundation, and they happened to address it to Warren Buffett, who's the largest donor to the foundation. And in that article, they cited this figure, 122 million people. 122 million children have been saved by the administration of vaccines since 1990. This is a larger population than most countries on Earth. And it's because of the wonder and miracle and the innovation of vaccination. This is a technology that was innovated in the 20th century that's having massive life-changing impact in our lives today. Why don't we think about it in the same magical way we do about our smartphone? Because vaccinations, like many technologies, have approached a certain place in our society and life where they're so entrenched we don't even think about it. They take on a core part of our lives, and that actually should be the aspiration of information technology as well. It should become so embedded in our lives that we don't think about it as something special or magical. It's just taken as accepted that it's a core part of what we do every day. Now I'll show you a video that I think conveys how information technology is actually impacting our daily lives and articulates it in a human-centric way. Too often we think about information technology as science fiction, as something that's happening to us, something invading us, when in fact what it's really doing is trying to enhance our daily life. So this video by Google I thought was amazing. It was done years ago. You may have seen it as a television commercial, but it was an attempt to articulate the role of communication technologies specifically in our daily lives. I'll play about 30 seconds of this video. So you get the idea. It's a wonderful ad. If you want to see the full ad, I encourage you to go on YouTube. You'll find it. But clearly what that illustrates, and it hits a warm spot for me as the recent father of a 4.5-month-old daughter, that there's this tight integration between technology and our daily lives. And it's a great articulation of the role of video, images, and communication in our lives as well. Let's transition, though, to the impact of technology on commerce, on the buying and selling of goods. We've also seen an amazing transformation in entire industries through the use of technology in how we think about accessing products. Here, of course, you see a chart of companies we all know, Walmart and Amazon, but I wanted to get specifically into the numbers to really highlight the true magnitude of the perceived value creation from new technologies being applied to commerce. In this case, you can see a chart of market capitalization, in which Amazon enjoys double the market capitalization of Walmart. Right? And you can see the dramatic upturn in that curve of market valuation. What you may not know, or may not be obvious to you, is while this is the case in terms of market capitalization, Walmart still enjoys almost 3.5 times the revenue annually that Amazon does. So what the market is saying is we are betting on the promise of continued innovation, creating value for everyone involved in commerce, and so we're betting not on the size of the company, today, but on what it will deliver in the future. Similarly, and it's the use of marketplace technologies, using technology to arbitrate and connect buyers and sellers. Buyers don't know what's available. Sellers don't know who's interested in what they have to sell. Using technology to eliminate that information asymmetry and bring them together and match the perfect supplier with the perfect product for the perfect buyer with the perfect interest and need is what technologies like this do. So we'll come back to marketplace technologies later in real estate. But you're also seeing marketplace technologies impact commerce in not very obvious ways. I think of Netflix as a marketplace. Netflix is a marketplace that connects producers of content with those who like to consume content. And they use an algorithm that sits in between to match those who have media content to offer and those who want to watch and enjoy media content. And similarly, you're seeing the market saying that this marketplace model of commerce is something that they value significantly more than traditional approaches. So while these are in the consumer domain, I do believe that these technologies will come to bear in the property and the real estate sector as well. The timing, it couldn't be more perfect. We have a number of new technologies making themselves available that have direct relevance to our sector. And we'll just quickly walk through some of the images. So geolocation navigation, mapping. Of course, you can see here payments, online payments. The Internet of Things, items monitoring foot traffic through buildings, drones monitoring high-value assets, safe cybersecurity and access, augmented reality and virtual reality, and big data, driving insight about the value of properties relative to one another. So there's a variety of technologies that are all growing and evolving today that directly have relevance to the real estate sector. And here you can see a number of companies that are pursuing this opportunity. Over $6 billion in venture investment has happened in the last 4 years in the real estate sector alone. Perhaps many of you didn't know that. One of the most invested sectors from a venture standpoint in the last 6 years. And these are just a subset of the names. And of course, PropertyGuru, the holders and sponsors of this conference, are a part of that transformation, using marketplace concepts and technology to bring together buyers and sellers in a more value-creating, optimal way. So the marketplace concept, the technologies underpinning it, you see directly coming into the real estate sector here in our region and through PropertyGuru. And happening at massive scale. So I'm on the board of JLL, and I'll talk a little bit about what a quote-unquote conventional company in the real estate sector is doing to take advantage of these technology trends also. Let me just skip ahead and speak to this image for a moment. So people ask me, what have you learned from being on the board of JLL? The first thing I can say I've learned is a healthy respect for this sector. I don't think people outside the sector fully appreciate this is the largest asset class in the world. $200 trillion of asset value. It's mind-blowing. This is multiples of the global GDP. Right? So this is a massive sector, and it's central to our lives. People think about real estate with the same passion they think about cars. There's something that goes beyond the rational. There's an emotional connection to this industry and to the idea of property. So I've learned a respect and an appreciation for the sector for sure. The second thing I've learned is no technology transformation will be successful if it is not owned by the CEO. The leader has to say, this is important. And I'm proud of Christian Ulbrich, the CEO of JLL, who this year threw down the gauntlet in his letter to shareholders in the current annual report and stated that he will make sure that JLL is a leader in the real estate digital space. Not just a participant, but will lead. And it takes that kind of leadership for a traditional real estate player to make the necessary hard changes to incorporate something new like technology into their current organization and operation. Here you can see the company's strategy, which is termed Thinking Beyond. And out of the 6 pillars, digital is one. Secondly, you need to infuse the company with the right domain expertise. Even if you have a leader who says this is important, they can't wish it to happen. You need to have the right people to make those kinds of changes happen. So while at JLL, I would say we have some of the best real estate domain experts, researchers, designers, construction and facility management employees, and of course brokers and capital market experts, I would also say, I would admit, we're not experts in software. So if you want to be as good in software as you're going to be in everything else you do, you need to infuse the organization with that expertise. So one of the things I helped lead on the board with our CEO was the hiring and the building out of a software development group within JLL called JLL Spark. And we hired the head of product and the head of engineering from Groupon globally to run that software development group. And they directly report to the CEO. Their budget is directly allocated by the CEO. So you can see how serious a company like this is taking the importance of software and digital in what they do every day. And this is the only way to take a traditional company and really, at a global scale, this is a company with tens of thousands of employees. This is the only way to drive change to every frontline employee in the organization around the world. This kind of ownership, this kind of domain expertise at the highest levels. The next thing I learned is that despite all the digital transformation work one might want to do, it is actually not about the technology at all. Right now what we're engaged in, which I think will be the ultimate determinant of success, is change management, culture changes, communication to the organization, inclusion and empowerment. The people changes will be what determines the technology value, not the other way around. And so this evolution process from being a broker who did a very manual job and thought about technology maybe as the spreadsheet that they may use that has all the properties listed that they want to show a client, to something far more involved is going to be a very, very important journey that will be the true determinant of our success at JLL. It's further complicated by the fact that the process of learning itself is accelerating. McKinsey once did a research study, which I found very interesting. They calculated something called the topple rate. The topple rate is the number of years it takes for the leadership in a given industry to change. The amount of time it takes for a leader to fall and a new leader to emerge in any given industry today is about 1/5 what it was 100 years ago. So the pace of change is dramatically increasing, and technology is a big part of that. So we don't have a lot of time. We have to operate with a sense of urgency. But I do think that in this industry, people will continue to be critical, and it's about how those people harness technology. It's not about how those people are replaced by technology. And I believe that because observation number one, which is obvious to all of you, if you think about products and services on these two dimensions, the size of the transaction value and the degree to which that asset is unique or not a commodity, you couldn't find something further to the upper right-hand corner than real estate. Probably the biggest purchase anyone will make in their life, business or individual, and nothing more unique and bespoke than a piece of property. You don't really understand it until you feel the width of the hallways, until you feel the size of the room, until you understand how the light comes through the window, and you understand the land and the property around you, and your location of your neighbors vis-a-vis the property you're looking at. It is very difficult to understand online. Not impossible, but difficult. So I still think that intermediaries, like brokers, will be extremely important. But if they cannot use technology to create more value for their clients, they will not be in business. So while it's great to know that we all as intermediaries will still have a role, we will not have a role if we do not evolve. The next piece is that a place where technology will make a huge difference, it's not as sexy, but it's extremely important, is in workflow automation and workflow efficiency. Here's an example of a company that JLL bought called Corrigo, which is a facilities management platform. So Corrigo automates the entire purchase order, invoice, vendor selection process for plumbing, air condition repair, lighting, and so on. What used to be a heavily manual process now is fully transparent with access to a marketplace of service providers, easily accessible through your phone or through your desktop. Pick vendors where you can look at the vendors' reviews, their ratings, understand if they're good or they're not good, understand a synopsis of their service offering, and then select them. And the entire order process and payment process is all technology-driven and automated. It doesn't feel sexy, but it is highly impactful. Think about the business processes in your own companies. Imagine how automation can make it so much more efficient for you that you can spend more time with clients. Another trend, though, just to play slight devil's advocate to what I said, is I do think a place where you will see perhaps more aggressive use of full technology to fully execute and broker a transaction in real estate is in global real estate investment. So imagine, a buyer in Hong Kong looking at a property in London. Here is where I think there's an amazing opportunity for augmented reality to mitigate the risk of that review process and potential purchase online. And I've actually tried augmented reality devices. It is stunning. I've been able to see a full image of a human eye. I could rotate the eye with my hand, see the veins pulsating, resize it, make it smaller. Imagine doing that with a property. Imagine walking through the halls, seeing the lighting, walking the grounds of the property. I think augmented reality is going to be transformational, particularly for buyers in remote locations, investors, both the residential side and the commercial side. The next to last trend or observation I'm excited about is identity management and access. So this is a global entry kiosk. For those who are Americans, you may know this. This is a kiosk that you can use to enter and exit the United States without standing in an immigration line. If you provide biometric information and fingerprints, you can go to this kiosk, place your 5 fingers on the panel, and literally within 1 minute, you can enter the country with no immigration officer intervention. So what this gets me thinking about from a real estate perspective is, as we move towards a world in which I would call it liquid space, many people use that term in real estate, as even countries become more liquid, the easy entry and exit of countries and boundaries, think about this same concept for any commercial property. Imagine getting better asset utilization for a hotel because you can provide a safe entry and access privilege for a third party not staying in that hotel to use the business center, to use the gym. Imagine working environments where you have this kind of entry and access controlling technology that allows the free flowing of people in and out of spaces, where you decouple the notion of the ownership of a space and the use of a space. This is not that different than Uber, not that different than WeWork, right? And this is the trend that I think is particularly exciting for Asia. In emerging markets in Asia in particular, you will find increasingly an attitude towards service, not ownership. Many people don't have or don't want to lay out the capital to buy an asset. They don't want to buy a car, they don't want to buy a home, but they may want to use a property. They want to use a car to get the benefit that that asset can provide. They would rather subscribe or pay for use than put a down payment to own the asset. That may be a privilege they don't have, or maybe a choice they choose not to make. So I think this idea of creating spaces that are assets that can be used on a as-needed basis, on-demand basis, using security and identity technologies, and using payment models that are simple and online to flow in and out of spaces with ease, I think is a very exciting concept. I've invested in companies myself that are working on that problem, and I'm excited about how that will transform the way we think about space and access to space over the next 10 years. And I think in Asia in particular, this will have more influence than perhaps other developed countries, where the notion of making a down payment and making large fixed payments every month for 30 years is more the norm. And this will be true because in our region, we are seeing a significant professionalization, institutionalization, and securitization of real estate as an asset. What that means is we're every day including more and more people into participation in real estate. There's tremendous headroom. People who never thought about owning a home or accessing a home, people who never thought about running a business and having their own office, now are starting to think about that because of the secular growth in the region and the professionalization of the industry. So as these secular trends continue, I think the kinds of technologies I talked about will intersect with those trends and make Asia a particularly exciting region for innovation in the PropTech sector. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Now we may have some time for some Q&A.
That was a lot of content, so if you do have questions, I'm happy to clarify any part of it. Or if you disagree, I'd love to hear your view.
Are you guys doing anything blockchain?
Yeah, so the question was, is JLL doing anything in blockchain? So for those who maybe don't know what blockchain is, this is, in my view, a simple way to explain it. It's essentially an accounting, reporting, and record-keeping system that uses technology in a globally standard way that's very transparent. So in that definition, I think lies a significant opportunity for companies in this sector to bring a level of transparency and honesty that in certain corners of the industry we haven't enjoyed. I can speak a market I'm very familiar with, in India, hasn't been reputed as being one of the more transparent real estate markets. And while some who currently transact in real estate in India might view blockchain as a threat, I actually think it's going to unlock tremendous value. Because a lot of foreign direct investment that would love to participate in the fastest growing economy in the world now and by participating in real estate as an asset, I can tell you, are keeping their funds at home because they just don't trust the market. So utilization of things like blockchain to bring trust as a necessary precursor to significant investment, I think will create a lot of value in Asia in general. This is a region that people are salivating to participate in with respect to real estate. They just won't do it because they can't trust it. And I think blockchain can be maybe not the solution to all of that, but a really important component. And so yes, to answer directly your question, we are looking at blockchain as a component technology. We don't look at it as a centerpiece to something, but it's an important technology to bring the kinds of transparency and sort of professionalism to certain parts of the industry that I think we believe is important. Any other questions, comments? Yes, please.
You talked about transactional perspective towards real estate. How do you touch on the service aspects and the marketing aspects of ongoing technological, of ongoing assets that need marketing and other forms of service provision?
So let me repeat the question. It's a very good question, and it's a nice compliment to what I spoke about. So the question was, speak about the role of technology in marketing and ongoing operations in the sector. Yeah? So from using the JLL framework, we're involved in every aspect of the real estate sector, from capital markets, advising on how to find the capital to purchase a property, brokerage to assist in actually securing the property, and then post-transaction, post-acquisition operations, facilities management, property management, security of the facility, if that's what you're referring to. And then, of course, there's marketing, which is how do you let people know that you have a property that's available for either lease or purchase. So marketing operations are also very important. So let me start with operations. So I did point to Corrigo, which is a facilities management marketplace platform that brings occupiers of real estate together with vendors that they need to provide the service, whether it's air conditioning, plumbing, lighting, security, what have you. That platform, in our view, is transformational because it takes intermediaries like JLL out of the equation and allows us to advise the client on which are the best vendors to use for particular purposes. They don't have to be limited just to using JLL staff. They can use whoever's best in the market. So we're creating a different kind of value as a service provider and really unlocking all the service offerings in the market for a client. I think that will continue to happen. You've got really interesting companies that are doing things with parking. So they're aggregating available corporate parking, and they're actually allowing people to schedule parking. Office worker at office A can schedule parking at office B, and vice versa. So you're decoupling parking from the actual working environment and thinking about parking at a city level and just optimizing utilization of space that way. So I think there are lots of operational, and then of course there's an entire set of innovation around green energy, clean energy, HVAC systems that are far more efficient in replenishing high quality air and oxygen into the workplace. So there are a variety of technologies addressing various aspects of operations and that I'm also excited about. From a marketing standpoint, that's something I think is more tried and true. Of course, there will always be more innovation, but with the advent of Google and Facebook and YouTube in particular, you now have over $100 billion in advertising revenue from 2 platforms in principle that are driving massive volumes of traffic to those seeking real estate space, commercial or otherwise. So I think we're at a point now where digital marketing is a must. It's no longer an innovation. It's no longer something to try and experiment with. You have to allocate significant budget to it because that's where people discover property. And increasingly, as real estate becomes a global marketplace, it's no longer, I'm in my neighborhood, I want to buy something in my neighborhood. It's, I'm in country A, I'd like to have an asset in New York. I'd like to have an asset in Shanghai. I'd like to have an asset in Melbourne. Clearly, technology-driven marketing, where you can do the marketing from your hometown and market that property around the world, for anyone around the world who's interested, is a more effective way to market a property globally, because digital channels can reach everywhere in an instant. So I think when it comes to marketing, if I'm understanding how you're thinking about marketing correctly, this is no longer an option. This is no longer an experiment. This is central to, I think, most realtor strategies. I will tell you, I did a search yesterday on the internet for homes for sale, and the first 6 results were all non-traditional brokers. Zillow, PropertyGuru. There wasn't a single traditional broker in the top results, which tells me that the message I just shared with you is still not getting through.
Right, we have questions for the gentleman over there. Please use the mic. Okay, and one next to him. Thanks.
The increasing use of technology in marketing properties, are you sensing situations of dishonesty and misrepresentation of products that are disseminated through technology? And how big is this concern now? The accuracy and integrity of data that's transmitted.
So the question was, is it a concern that some of the online marketing is false and misleading? So I think that's always a concern across any industry. For example, the credit card companies, every year obsess about bad debt and fraud, and that percentage is always 1, 2, 3, 4%. You can never get rid of it, but you do everything in your power to minimize it and keep it within acceptable range. I would say the same standard applies to digital marketing, which is that it's very difficult to police and completely eradicate, but you think a lot about how to make sure there are systems in place to minimize it, if not eliminate it. For example, one of the most important mechanisms we have is ratings and reviews. It sounds simple, but if reputation matters, so reputation management online. If I am an ongoing agent or seller of a property, and I have an identity online, Shailesh Rao, and I post a picture of a property on PropertyGuru, and that listing is against my name, and it turns out to be false. You can put a review against my name and give me a 1 star out of 4 stars that ruins my reputation. And appropriately so. And I think reputation management online through ratings and reviews has been a very important check and balance on bad behavior. Does it still happen? Yes. Do you still get some misrepresentations? Yes. But I think that kind of advancements in digital marketing are helping us minimize it so that the benefit it's largely a benefit than a cost.
Any last questions? I think time for just one short one. All right, I guess I'll take a crack at this because I know there's a lot of thought leaders in the room and also small and medium real estate enterprises. So I'd love to know that I've been in this industry, I've been seeing a lot of talk about prop tech. Not a lot has been done. And what are some of your thoughts in terms of the best course of action and some of the hurdles that a lot of the peers in this room need to get over? And kind of another loaded one is this opportunity only for big companies or can small companies participate as well for prop tech?
So there's a little bit of feedback on your first part of your question. I got the second question, which is it just for large companies or small?
Yeah. And some of the best practices in terms of executing to be in part of this space and some of the hurdles that everybody in this room has to go through.
Okay. So the question was best practices and is this available for small companies? I would say that technology is more valuable for small companies than large. Much more valuable. If you're a small company owner, if you run a small brokerage, if you run a small service provider in the real estate sector, if you're a developer of mid-size, you know that you have a finite budget. You have finite resources. And you probably pay more attention to return on investment and use of that budget than a large company will. So when you find a mechanism to do something that you must do, but you can do it with less cost and more efficiently, I argue a small business will find much more value in using technology to save costs, to be more efficient than a large company. And so whether it's digital marketing, whether it's back office, business process automation, I think small companies will hugely benefit. There's a trend going on right now across sectors in what I would call G&A outsourcing, so general and administrative outsourcing. Many of you have to do things with legal and HR and medical benefits, and you have all of these standard overhead functions, which can be quite costly in terms of labor and other expenses. You're increasingly seeing technology companies offer those services with significant cost savings. So you don't have to be an expert in all of it. If you want to be an expert in real estate, and you don't have time to be an expert in payroll, and you don't have time to be an expert in medical benefits, you now have technology options where you can outsource that so you can focus more on your business. In terms of best practices, I would say one best practice is if you're a CEO or a leader of your business, use technology as a consumer. The best way to understand technology is to use it. You'll never intellectually understand it by reading it. You won't understand it after this morning's talk. You really only understand it if you use it. So I would encourage you actively use transaction platforms on your phone. Use e-wallets and payment. Go to a Samsung Center or HTC Center and try a virtual reality headset or AR headset. Use PropertyGuru. Do lots of searches to understand how the images and the videos present themselves. Set up a listing if you haven't done that before and understand how to do that. The only way to understand something new is to try it. And the beautiful thing about technology is it usually doesn't cost very much. Usually it's free. So the only thing you have to give to it is your time and your willingness to try something. And I'd even say, ask your kids, ask a niece or nephew. They can help you kind of get exposed to something that may feel otherwise intimidating. So that would be my main best practice. The second one would be bring one or two people into your company who have some digital expertise. Most likely a digital marketer. It doesn't have to be someone very senior. Bring a young digital marketer to the organization, and it would be amazing how that energy becomes infectious. Every meeting with that person will force you to go on the internet and learn new terms and understand things that you've never heard about. So I would encourage you to do that as well.
All right, and time is up. Please give a big round of applause to Shailesh Rao.
Thank you.